This video is about learning how to watch and learn and take notes from a video lecture. Okay, so this video is going to instruct you on how to learn from a video and effectively take notes while learning from it. And those two things will help you retain information. All right, so this is one of my personally favorite quotes. And this is the important part. The way the brains are wired severely limits our capacity to learn. You've got to work with your brain, or sometimes trick it, in order to learn information. If you want to learn more, you got to learn how to work the brain. And one way to work it is by using metacognitive strategies. That's a big word. Okay? Basically, think about your thinking. You want to make predictions. You want to think about explaining ideas and analyzing them. You want to do what teachers call activate prior knowledge, which means relate it to something that you do understand. Relate it to something that you know. For example, if we talk about gravity, you've dropped things, you've thrown things, you know how gravity works. Link that to the math done in class. All right, so this is something that all your teachers have seen, and many of you have probably seen it or at least experienced your teachers using it. This is called the cone of learning, and it basically says that different ways are better at teaching you than others. If you just read something, you're going to retain about 10% of it. That's not very much. If you hear something, 20%. If you see something, 30%. Both hear and see, 50%. You retain 70% of what you say. And if you both say and do something, you're supposed to retain 90%. Now, this is often put forth as a hard or fast, but we're all different. For example, I really learn very well when I hear things. Okay? I retain more than 20% of what I hear. It's the way my brain works. Okay? Another thing, certain types of learning are better for certain things. For example, if I'm learning a basic skill, I may be able to just watch or hear it or see it, okay? That may be better for a basic skill, while if I'm learning something complicated, it might be better if I do it, okay? So the videos are usually about basic skills. We're teaching you how to do the basic lower levels, okay? And oftentimes seeing and hearing and taking notes on that is the best way to learn. And that's what studies have shown. And I like studies. Science, we like numbers. All right, so tips for watching videos. I have 3 tips, and I'm going to explain to you why each one is, because each one you're like, well, I may not do it. But you want to do it, and I'll tell you why. Tip 1, turn off your phones, your iPads, etc. Turn off your distractions. Okay? This is a hard one for us. I know. But we want to do it. Why do we want to do it? See this big, fun, fancy chart? This will explain to you why we want to do it. This has to do with the brain's limited ability. Short-term memory can retain about 4 things, 4 objects, packets of knowledge, in the visual spatial memory, and 7 in the verbal short-term memory. So there's 2 types of short-term memory. One is the visual spatial. Okay, so things you've seen, and yeah, mostly things you've seen. And verbal short-term is things that you've heard. So you can, with those 2 things, retain 11 objects. Give or take, your brain may be better or may be worse, but that's about average. Okay, so if you shift your attention, let's say your cell phone goes off and you get a text message and you read it, that introduces a new element into your short-term memory. And, come on, you're going to want to respond to that. So there's another element, and it's probably going to link to something else. So there's another element. As you introduce other things into your brain, you lose things that you've already had. So if I have just put forth information to you, and you get distracted, you're going to lose that. It's no longer going to be in your short-term memory. And if it's not in your short-term memory, there's no chance of it getting to your long-term memory. All right, so when you're watching this, really turn off the distractions. I know It's not easy, but please do it. I have reasons for my request. Okay, so this puts things into your working memory. Okay, that short-term memory. By turning that off and paying attention, you have this new information in your short-term memory. Now, number 2 is pause and rewind the teacher. This is something you can't do in class, or if you do in class, everyone else has to wait for you while you pause the teacher, ask a question, have them repeat themselves. Okay? Pause and rewind. Wonderful, wonderful thing. Why do you want to pause and rewind? Okay. The processing in working memory automatically triggers the storage to long term. So, our memory was here in short term. If we process it, if we do any of these things, for example, if we think about it, if we analyze what we just heard, if you try to make sense of what I tell you, think about it. It goes to your long-term memory. That means that you're going to remember it the next day, the next week, hopefully the next month. Okay? So by pausing it and rewinding, you can go back, think about it again. For example, if I say something interesting, you're like, wait, did I get that? Pause, think about it, rewind, replay. Ha! Genius. Okay? Come on. How often is the teacher at your beck and call? Number 3, you want to take notes and write down any questions you have. Okay? This goes along with the same part of the thinking and the sense making. It goes along with schema making, organizing, analyzing. Okay? By taking notes, you're taking that information in, you're putting it down on paper in some sort of organization that makes sense. In a schema, for example, a thinking map. That's one reason why teachers have you do them. Because by putting that information in an organization manner, it helps transfer to your long-term memory. So you can remember it later. So storing. And your long-term memory can hold a heck of a lot more than your short-term. Now, that the video is done. Okay, this video is not done. But after you've done those 3 things, then maybe you can look at your phone. But wait until after. All right, effective note-taking. Second part of this video was about how to take notes. I don't care necessarily how you take notes. There's a couple of guidelines I like to give. I want you guys to find out what works for you. You can create the notes on the computer or by hand. Some people really like to just type up their notes. It makes it easier to read, easier for them to retain and retrieve. Some people like notes. Some people like doing their notes by hand. I don't care. It's whatever works for you. Okay? If you're doing them on the computer, images and pictures can be taken of the notes. I don't mind that. But if your notes are only or mostly the images, I'll consider that you're just copying exactly what I put, and that will not be considered or allowed in the class. So if you go through a notes check and it's just images of my notes, you're going to earn a 0, because that is not going through that thinking, retrieving, processing, organization process. Okay? I did that, not you. All right. And the notes, if you distribute notes to other people during class or between classes, if you give your notes away, that will be considered cheating. Once again, it's all about getting you to understand. Just thought I'd make sure that was all clear. All right, effective note-taking. Your notes must have your name, a title, and a main ideas or topics. Okay? All notes should have this. It makes it easier to retrieve and to organize, to pull the information out, and it lets me know that it's your notes and not John Doe's. Your notes must be something you can refer back to. And when I say this, I mean it must be readable. Okay, it must be organized. It can't be just a whole bunch of words. It can't be words that you can't read again. So you've got to take the time to make them look nice. Your notes must be organized in a way that makes sense to you. Not necessarily to me, but to you. And your notes must be marked. I want you to highlight, underline, circle, star, This helps with processing the working memory. Okay, now this is something that I really enjoy because there have been studies that show and do this. All right, and this is what this is all about. Okay. If you hear something only once, okay, you're going to lose things exponentially over time. So, in 3 months, if you've heard things only once, you're going to maybe retain 30% of it. Okay, so the first time you hear something and work with something, you might retain 30% of it. Okay, so if we put that to the idea of a test, you're going to get a 30% on the test. And that's if you're lucky. If you have had one repetition within 18 minutes of the first one, okay, then you're going to likely retain about 60% of it. And that's what we do. I have you do the videos and then answer questions. That way, you've seen it first time, you've repeated it with the questions within 18 minutes. That's supposed to allow you to retain about 60% of the knowledge, a passing grade. Now, if you do that within 1 day, if within 1 day you see it again, so you come to class and we do something with it in class, you're likely to retain about 75% of it. There's a C. Okay, not great grade, respectable. Right, that's with seeing something 3 times. All right, 2 repetitions. Now, if we refer back to it again within 7 days, you go back and you see it again, you're likely to retain about 90% of it. And if we go back again within the next month, 95%. And that's kind of the structure of the class. You see the videos at night, so you get that first exposure. You get the repetition with the questions. You get the second repetition in class. You get the third, maybe the class after, and then we'll refer back to it again in 31 days, for example, with the test and studying for the test, and that gives you a retention of about 90%. So I think that's rather effective. All right, note-taking strategy again. Another one, this is a way if you want to organize it. I like things organized. This is called the STAR note-taking strategy. Set up your paper, take the notes. After the video, within 5 minutes, go back and highlight. This also goes back with that whole within 18 minutes repetition. So if you go back, you highlight, you underline, you organize. That can help you there. And make sure you review the notes while studying for the test. And there's another repetition. So this is just a strategy that helps keep you set up. All right. If you want to do notes, one possible way, may not be your way, it can be your way. I'm giving you different strategies to use, is the Cornell Notes strategy. I actually have 2 computer links for Cornell Notes. One of them is if you want to take notes on the computer. Okay, it's in a Word document, so you can type in there. Okay, those are computer notes. The other one, if you want to do handwritten notes. So these are ones that you can easily print off. They're already organized for you. Okay, so if you're having trouble with note-taking, it's not organized, it's not referable, it's not readable, Cornell Notes. Great choice. Another way you can organize your notes, and I tend to do it this way, because Cornell Notes, they don't work great for me. Some people they do, some people they don't. Me, I like to organize things in what I call schema or graphic organizer. Okay, a thinking map. And basically I take the information I know and I break it down and I create links. So for example, we have frequency, velocity, and wavelength. If I was to put in the equation, this is V equals lambda F. So it links these 3 things, and that's why I have arrows there. Frequency is equal to 1 over period. Okay, so that gives me period. Now if I combine those 2 things together, I'll get frequency equals lambda divided by period. Okay, so that's just the way I organize things. I like to set things up in basically a train or some sort of schema like that. So those are just some possible ways you can go about approaching your notes. All right, so in this video, you should have learned how to learn from a video. The 3 nice hints that I gave you: turn off your cell phone, pause and rewind, take notes, and write down your questions. Okay, effectively take notes. I gave you a couple of strategies. You can use Cornell notes. You can use graphic organizers. You can use something else if it works for you. And all of that, along with some extra information I gave you, should help you learn how to retain information. Remember, keep your distractions out. There's only so much your brain can hold at a time. If you introduce new things, you're going to lose them. Okay? And before you introduce something else, process what you've already learned. Okay? Think about it, organize it, and then move on. Okay? All right, that's the end of the video.